tripling my full-time salary was like my biggest win.
Should we not be automating messages, or is that a good thing?
How do we do that? How do we nurture our community?
Now there's light bulbs going off over your head, and Instagram is rubbing its hands together saying, we've got you. One of the most effective things that I didn't even consider when I was getting started, that now I look back and I'm like, here's what you do.
Pro tips right there. Everybody,
what else you got?
Hey creators, it's your hosts, Natalie and Yasmin, and you're listening to the CourseCreation podcast. We'll talk business, building digital empires, and how to create passive income to start living a life you love. We are here to empower those of you who are thinking of starting your own course and to support those who are already well on their way to success. We've built a 7-figure media agency on unique storytelling, and now we're here to share our story in the course creation world, and more importantly, to hear yours. We are committed to creating a space for learning and a space for diversity and inclusion. Now let's get the show started. 3, 2, 1, action. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Course Creation podcast. Our lovely guest today is Dre Fox. She is the founder of Time of Dre Media. She is a social media consultant, blogger, and motivational speaker. She has been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and the Washington Post. Dre's days are filled teaching her genius zone, which is social media marketing, and providing mentorship on how to hack and navigate Instagram. She has several courses available, including her course called The Elevated Instagram, and her mission is to help small businesses and personal brands grow their online presence into profitable opportunities. We're so excited to chat with Dre today. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. That was a great intro. I need to steal that for myself.
No problem. I'll send it over to you. I got it from you.
Yasmin is the intro queen. Like, she always brings it. But we also really want to hear from you in your own words. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So my whole life, I grew up with a very large extended family of 12 aunts and uncles. And out of these 12 aunts and uncles, almost all of them were entrepreneurs. So when I grew up, and my dad as well, I saw these people around me that like had these cool lifestyles that were not super traditional. And I knew I wanted something like that for myself, but I'm very creative. And sometimes the pitfall of being very creative is that you lack a level of direction. And so I was really great at having cool ideas, but not very great at the follow through or the execution of said ideas. So while I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur someday, I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I knew that working for somebody else was not going to be the exact move for me long term. So I did a lot of interesting things. I like to tell people I'm the jack of all trades, but a master of none. I've tried everything once, I've worked in every role and industry because I wanted to find something that felt like home. And actually, my background is being a pastry chef. Wow. So I moved to New York City and I went to the New School of Culinary Education and I got a pastry degree, and I started doing a bakery for about 7 years. And it was so much fun doing this like creative outlet. But unfortunately, I was paid about $13 an hour, and I knew that just couldn't be the way to go. So I packed up my bags. I moved to Austin, Texas, got in the tech industry, and worked for a social media software company, which really led me to where I am today.
Amazing journey. How was New York, by the way?
It was, I was under 21. So my biggest regret is that I was there at such a weird age that I didn't get to like live the New York lifestyle. But, I really knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I like to tell people, honestly, I'm a serial failed entrepreneur. So I had a jewelry making business. I had my bakery. I painted paintings for a while. But through this really incredible software job, I found a love for social media, which at one point actually kind of seemed like trivial knowledge. And now I realize how impactful that knowledge can actually be.
I really love something that you just mentioned, which is a serial entrepreneur. And what did you say? Failed? A serial failed entrepreneur?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really love that because I feel like, I don't know where I heard this, but it was one of those big founders. And they said, I've literally built 120 businesses before I found the one. And many people think that business is like an overnight success. And if they try once, try twice, try 3 times and didn't make it, then it's done for them. But the honest to God truth is that our search for success is not an overnight, you know, search. It's you learn every time you build something, and just knowing that you've done that so many times only shows that at some point you can persevere. So, speaking of perseverance, can you share some of your successes with our audience?
Yeah. So, um, I would say quitting my full-time job and being able to support myself, double, tripling my full-time salary was like my biggest win. People saying that I couldn't do it and then being like, oh, wait, no, I can. And I did. That I would say is my biggest success story overall. But, having some of these incredible opportunities to partner with media and actually share my message further, um, really is just like a moment of pride. Never in my lifetime wildest dreams did I think I would be featured in Forbes multiple times, that Create and Cultivate would have me do a 4-part series for their audience. Things that just seemed like this far off concept, now have become a reality. But if we're talking more about like my clients, things that I've helped with, I've had multiple students been able to quit their job, which was exactly why I got into the business in the first place. Was I knew that if I had these pains and these dreams, that there were a million people standing behind me that wanted to do the same. So, the first time I had someone quit their job, it was like I felt like I was quitting my job along with them. It was like we did it together. But I've had students that made $20,000 in a weekend launching their first program or offering, and that is just replicable at scale across the internet. And that's one of the really cool things that I've seen is like success is abundant on social media as long as you know what paths to take. So yeah, helping people quit their jobs, starting their own businesses, really creating their own empires, providing for their families. Those are the biggest ones.
So, would you say that you call yourself the Instagram queen?
I would say that I call myself like an Instagram expert or a social media expert. Other people have referred to me as that before. I've never called myself that, but I was telling somebody earlier today, I was like, I really do feel like I have a fundamental understanding of every piece of Instagram. So I truly view myself as having an expert level of knowledge about the platform.
Okay, amazing. So I think we need to really focus there and educate us and as well as our listeners on some of the very first steps to take in terms of establishing your presence on Instagram. And beyond that, there's a community building aspect to it, of course, that comes hand in hand. So, really representing your brand, being aware and conscious of your voice and how you want to present yourself, but also listening to your audience. So if, for our listeners who are just creating a potential like new course or have a new product offering or just want to get themselves out there on Instagram, what are some of the initial steps that we need to follow for success?
Sure. So a few tangible things that you can do right away is to really do a self audit of your account. We get blinders on after we've created an Instagram account where we don't realize that we're actually misrepresenting or not representing ourselves enough in the way that we'd like to be seen. So pretend like you are a complete stranger. You've hit your profile. Can you instantly tell what this person does? If the answer is no, something needs to change. If you read their bio statement and immediately you don't know who they are, why you would work with them, and what value they drive to you, we have more work to do. So typically the first places I begin with a client is really cleaning up the clutter and making sure that within 3 seconds, people understand what your account is actually about and that you're delivering that in your content. But I'll let you in on a secret. So this is a strategy I teach all of my clients, and it's called the content alignment protocol. And I know that sounds very fancy, but what that really means is if you want this type of business, right, you want to be the number one nutrition coach on the market, but your content is not attracting people who want that type of product, you will not have the business that you want. And if your audience is filled with people who don't want your products, you won't get engagement. And therefore, your content won't get seen by more people. So it's like this self-perpetuating cycle. So where we always start is actually at the end. Who do we want? Who do we want in this audience? Who do we want knocking down our door? And we create everything that we do for them. We build our audience for them. We put out content for them, which magnetizes the right people and gives us a warm lead pool so that when we do sell or share something, it's not filled with people from a giveaway or people from an engagement group. These are aligned people that found your content and thought to themselves, I'm in.
I have a question before you move on to what's next, because I know there's a what's next and it's super important. So a lot of the advice that we've been getting is make sure to survey your audience, get to know your audience, ask them questions about who they are, what they're interested in. Did I just hear from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are creating the type of client you want? Like, what I heard from what you just said is who's your ideal client and create content for them instead of survey the audience and then figure out what they want. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Especially if you're trying to build a business and you know where your heart is and where your expertise lies. It can be easy to get blinded by money or attractive offerings, but really at the end of the day, to have a sustainable business, you need to be passionate about what you're doing. And if we are building an audience of the wrong type of people, it will always be this hamster wheel of trying to please somebody else. So what I do is I start with the ideal person, then we are attracting and building the right audience. Then can we survey them, help ask questions to them, and create take my money offers for these people? Because you can survey people all day long, but if they're the wrong people, the data doesn't mean anything, right? So we want to make sure that we have authentic audiences build up with ideal clients, and we do that by manifesting them with our content. We call them with our content.
That's amazing. Thank you. I just had a total shift view of how to go about this, because ideally I'm like, okay, my next steps are is to send out a bunch of surveys to figure out who's out there and what they want. But it's so much more natural to say, this is who I'm selling to. This is who I'm talking to. That feels more natural. It just feels right. So I love that you said that. Okay, so what's next? So we're curating content specific to the demographic that we want to sell to. What's next after that?
So assuming that you've built the right audience, the people are there that you are interested in, it is...
Sorry, let's back up a second. So we're curating content, right?
Yeah.
And you just said, assuming that you've built the right audience. Are we creating content and hoping they will come? Or are there specific steps that we can take to then build that same audience?
So typically, there are a few things, right? We create the content, but if we don't use the right hashtags, the content goes nowhere. And if we post at the wrong time, the content goes nowhere. And there's a few kickers, if you will. Thankfully, hashtags are my zone of genius for sure on the platform. I have a mini course about that. But what we want to do is we want to create awesome content, but then we take our fishing lines, which is our hashtags, and we fish those out into the water, and we try to get that bait right in front of our ideal person. So really what you're going to see, this theme that I keep coming back to, is if you have no idea who your ideal person is, everything becomes incrementally more challenging. So we want to think like our ideal customer. I see this all the time. Interior designers, they're using interior design hashtags. Totally logical thought process. But Brenda in Texas is not probably looking up interior design home tips. She's probably looking up coffee and, like fitness hashtags and other things. So we have to start putting ourselves in the shoes of this person, saying, what are they actually looking at when they show up on the internet? Where are they going? And how can I fish my content out in front of them so that they can see it, like it, see the value? We're a perfect match. We're in love now. They followed me. And now I have this person in my container to nurture them. But a lot of times people use the wrong hashtags for sure. And that can really inhibit follower growth and building real connections. And that is really important too. You can create all the best content, but we can't just assume everyone's going to come running through the door. They need to know we exist. So I really break it up into nurturing the people who have already followed through the door so that they don't unfollow, but also going out there and trying to get new followers by digging around in hashtags, competitors, and other logical places so that I can also gain new followers. So I call that a retain and gain strategy. It's like you got to keep the people, but you got to go get some more. And that paired with awesome content, great engagement strategy, and smart hashtags, you can have a pretty winning overall Instagram account that gets people clamoring to be a part of your container.
Very cool. So a couple of hot pressing questions that a lot of people ask. So what are some of the best times to be posting? And also going back to the topic of hashtags, I know there's this whole, we get advice that you should build in your hashtags within your post, or you should put in the first comment. What do we need to follow? What's the winning catch?
So I do mine in the first comment. I always have, and it's never been different. I typically, my average is about 2,500 to 4,000 hashtag impressions per post. So had I seen any different data, I would have tried other things, but that is what proved to be worthy for me.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep your thoughts. So when you do that, do you have to post that immediately? Does the timing matter as to how quickly you post your hashtags when you post your post?
It does, yes. Under 30 seconds, already have them ready. Do not post and then try to get hashtags. Be prepared. You want to slap those on there as quickly as possible. They're like kites that send it all over the internet. We want that on there very quickly. So I always am ready to go when I post. But as far as, things like the time goes, that is super variable. The logic that I give people is your ideal person, when would they have time to be on their phone? So if you told me you were targeting career people, 9-to-5s, CEOs, whatever, okay, well, they're not going to be on at 3 p.m. and they're not going to be on at 1 p.m. They're working. So we have to figure out when they would be on their phone, which would be morning, lunch, and before bed. Now, if you were to tell me that stay-at-home mothers were perhaps your target, then I would say, when do the kids go to school? When do they take a nap? When are they in bed? Those times would be other logical times. So it will be different for every single person, but you have to think like your ideal person, and that can help kind of guide your insight there.
Makes absolute sense. Okay, so let's talk about consistency when it comes to posting. You're engaged with your audience. They're liking what you're, obviously putting out there. What's the rule of thumb when it comes to consistency? Is there a specific, should we be posting one post a day? How do we integrate stories into the mix of posting on our feed as well?
Good question. Typically, the rule of thumb that I ask people when I'm working with them one-on-one is, what can you stick with? And if you were to tell me I can only stick with 3 posts a week, I would say that's great. We're sticking with 3 posts a week. But I typically recommend 4. 4 is the sweet spot. 5, 6, 7, way too much. 2, not enough. So if you can shoot for 4, that's great. But it's all about being realistic with yourself, your lifestyles, and your habits to make Instagram fun and sustainable. As far as stories go, I do recommend having something up every single day at minimum, even if it's sharing a quote card from somebody else or doing a quick poll. It doesn't need to be like revolutionary mind-bending videos every time. but it is that nice balance of whatever's on your timeline, kind of playing off that in your stories, adding more color to it, doing polls around the topic, getting a conversation started. But there's no rule of thumb with stories necessarily.
Okay, great. And when it comes to new relationships, I'm kind of going through your different categories and buckets here. So it's great. If somebody slides in your DM, that's awesome because it shows that they're potentially interested. What we've been trying to implement is making sure that we send a welcome message to everybody who joins, the Course Creation Podcast Instagram page. And it's just our way to connect. And we hope that they would respond and we can get to know a little bit more about them. So that's automated. And I would love to know your input on automation when it comes to DMs. Is that something that creates any sort of flags or triggers? Like, should we not be automating messages, or is that a good thing? And then also, how do you manage being in conversation with everybody? I mean, once you get to a certain followership, it becomes a little bit hectic and hard to follow.
Yeah. Okay. To answer your automation question, so there was a time that like automation was more accepted, I would say. Now I do think that most people view it in poor light, because just by virtue of having an automated message, they know you have automation. And most people view automation as any activity that is inauthentic. Regardless of whether you are or not, that's just how they see it. Like if you have the automated DM, you have something hooked up. And that can also get you red flagged by Instagram just by virtue of the access of something from a weird IP address. So what you can do is you can do a quick shortcut key. You can also do quick replies in DMs. It's like a saved reply where you could just manually do it, depending on how many followers you're getting a day. Something to consider. But, sending a welcome message is a great idea. It's a great idea for market research. Why did you follow us? What type of course do you have? And boom, you have a ton of data on that person, or you can point them in the right direction right away. But you can tell when it comes from a bot and when it comes from a person. So use your best judgment. If you see you're not getting a ton of replies, it's probably because people are not loving the bot. So use your gut instinct there. But, as far as like management goes, yes, you could spend 1,000 hours a month on Instagram easily if you wanted to. What I typically do is I carve out time to go to inbox 0 and I respond to messages on my computer. So you can, if you have a business account, you can find all of your DMs on Facebook for Instagram, and you can just plow through a ton of messages right at one time, and then you can move on. So I typically try to do like one and done or twice a day and not constantly like do all the back and forth because it just gets really cumbersome for me.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's a good idea to perhaps welcome people to your community, but maybe a better gesture would be to actually do it like for real, like not have a bot do it.
Yeah, mention their name, say their name, or like take a quick look at their profile and hit them with a compliment, something like that. I know that's not sustainable long term, but if you're getting a strong lead, not like Kentucky Fried Chicken followed you, if it's a real person, you can go to their profile, use their name, give them a quick compliment, and then ask your market research question and see what kind of insight that you get. I think that would go a lot further than an automated response.
And how far in your strategy do you continue to do that? Is that a tactic that you do even today, or do you get to a certain level of followership where you're like, wow, I don't really need to continuously message the people who just started following me? Or is that something you still implement?
So I actually don't implement it. In my fantasies, I have the time to do this, but I just simply don't, because time of day is only one arm of my business. I have an agency as well. So I'm quite busy during the day. So I wish it was just time of day. That would be fun. but there's a lot more going on than that. So unfortunately, I do not. But I will say, the fortune is in the follow-up. If people are giving you indicators that they're interested and they're showing you the love, it's up to you to keep that relationship going, and following up is a big part of that.
That's huge. You mentioned something about nurturing that community. So we're cultivating content that hopefully is interesting to them, and then we nurture them. How do we do that? How do we nurture our community?
There's a lot of ways to do that. I would say there's active and passive ways to do that. By passively doing that, you're putting out content that respects their time and energy, right? So that's when people have no content strategy and they're winging it with a ton of random stuff about their family and their cats and their nieces. You're kind of disrespecting the relationship that you brought. You hooked them in for some reason, and now you're throwing them all this extra stuff. They're going to unfollow you. So when you deliver against your promises in your content, you are subconsciously nurturing them by giving them what they wanted in the first place. The other ways to do that is by putting out your best content for free. One cornerstone of Time of Joy success is that I'll tell you everything, I'll tell you everything, because when you think to yourself, wait, her free stuff is this good? I'm like, yeah, wait until you work with me, like I'll change your life. We can quit this job. Like, let's do this thing. And that's what people kind of can't get over. They're like, wait, I don't want to tell everybody everything. Then why would they work with me? But it doesn't work like that. People build a ton of trust with you when you nurture them with all this free content and free help. When you have a paid offering, they're just like, you've done this for me. We're already here. Like, let's take the next relationship step. But caring for people goes a long way. I remember things about people. I comment on their stories regularly. I follow up if they had a big moment in their life. I ask them about their day. I am never too proud to, treat every single person like I want to know everything about them. I think a lot of times when people's accounts grow, they forget that every human being is there, has the choice to leave. So the more that you treat them like they're a human being and respectful, you will build fans for life, which is really important.
So Dre, we have multiple brands, and I think this is something that I grapple with all the time. And we have I feel like we've just, excuse my French, but we've done a half-assed job with all of our social media presence because we've been so busy helping our clients. We've made up excuses. We haven't felt comfortable putting ourselves out there. Maybe we didn't have clarity in terms of what our voice was. So me personally, I've used my personal account just to connect with family and friends. That's how Instagram started for me. But I do have a lot to offer. There's a lot that we're doing. I would love to, start showcasing some of the things that are like my genius zone, and start communicating that with my audience and shifting from just friends and family to a bigger audience. So I have my personal account. We obviously have our professional accounts. We have our MYB account. We have our CourseCreation podcast account. At what point how do we navigate all of these different accounts and bring them together in a nice, happily ever after marriage?
Great question. You have found what I usually ask people is, are you going to have enough time to manage all of these accounts? And the answer is always, no, probably not. And you found that. I'm with you. I've got like 5 of my own accounts, but guess what gets posted on? One. So I would say that it's probably valuable for you all to have 2, or like a level of 2 accounts, or possibly 3, your own independent accounts, and then 1 combined, but really figuring out where the source of income comes from. Like, what out of all of your generation activities, is it investing more time in the podcast? Is it rolling the podcast into the business, and that becomes like a weekly post on the business series? Whatever is going to make the most sense. Like, that would be my gut instinct is, if you have your actual like media group, but you roll the podcast underneath it, it is almost like a credibility builder that like, we also have the podcast and here's the content from that, then trying to do all of the different pieces. But I think you have to kind of go with your gut. Managing multiple accounts becomes exhausting, and there are more eloquent ways to kind of push everything together and still hold the integrity of the topics.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I want to follow up to that question as well, because this is something that I'm personally struggling with myself. And it's that, I have, like Yasmin said, I have my personal account, which was sort of built on friends and family. It's not a lot of people, but I feel like on my personal account, I'm kind of just, I keep promoting my business endeavors. Like I'll do a post about the Course Creation podcast, then I'll do a post about NYB Media, and then I'll do a post about our new course that's launching, Video Editing 101. And it's like, I'm sure my friends and family and my other followers are like, what is going on with this girl? Like, she is just blasting us with all this stuff she's doing. Like, can you focus? Is that a no-no? It sounds to me like it's a no-no. Should I just focus?
I think what will happen is at the beginning, they'll support you and they'll say, yay, that's so exciting, these things. And then eventually their level of interest will peter out because they are not your ideal client, which is totally fine. And then they will turn into ghost followers that don't engage, or they'll unfollow you, which is a part of the game, right? Or a part of the process. So it's up to you to decide whether that is actually even like producing fruit, like, is there something coming from this or not? And can you reserve it back for just more friends and family stuff and not even bother if it's not giving you a return? So that's something that I've even grappled with too. I have a private account with friends and family, and every once in a while, if I do a giveaway or like a charitable cause, I'll share it over there. But for the most part, I've stripped it of that because none of them are trying to become Instagram business owners. So there's not much of a point of me doing that. Maybe moving some of that content to LinkedIn.
I like that. I feel like that what you just said really gives me the freedom to not have to constantly promote my stuff, because that's also part of business, is that sometimes I'll be like, okay, I have to tell people what I'm doing because that's part of business, is sharing. So it makes me feel like I don't have to stick to that. I have the freedom to just focus on course creation and not have to say, hey, Natalie here doing course creation. I want to not switch gears, but go back to what you were talking about, nurturing an audience, because I remembered my question. What's the balance between creating content of value and then personal content? Because a lot of the advice that we've been getting is people buy from that human connection. So you want to let people in on who you are and what your interests are, and a little bit about you, and then also offer value. So you were saying people posting about their cat and like their niece and whatever. I mean, I get that. I'm not into that. I'm not going to be like, hey guys, I'm sitting on my toilet. But what's the balance between posting about like creating valuable content for people where they can actually be like, okay, this is why I followed you, and then also here's a little bit about me and my personality?
Yeah, so there are a few cornerstones to amazing content, but one of them is that it's contextual. So when I'm referencing, not posting that your niece graduated from, kindergarten or whatever, it's typically because people are, giving us whiplash with going back and forth between these topics and these people that we've never seen and that we don't know, and that we're like, wait, what is happening? Who is this? When it's contextual, so you've introduced your husband, you've told the story about how your husband supported you in your business, we see him on your stories. If he shows up on your timeline, that's okay because it's contextual. But we have to make sure that people understand the bigger purpose or story as to why we are telling them some of these things. I tell people it's kind of like the Say by the Bell, Corey Matthews, like, you watch this episode, you're having some laughs, but then at the end, you learned something. And you're like, wait a second, I learned, you guys got me here, right? Like, I learned something. So even though we are sharing our personal stories every once in a while, right? I tell the story of leaving my job or how nobody supported me and everyone thought I couldn't do it. But then in the end, really what the message was is like, don't listen to other people's opinions. You too can have these dreams. but it's not going to be a cakewalk,
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that there is this nice balance of sharing, doing story branding at least twice a month on your timeline, very explicitly talking about your generation and creation story, but making sure that it has a point. Why are we sharing this? And then I bake it in with value driven content, which can take many forms. That typically for me looks like educational content, but for other people, it might be advice, or it might be wisdom, or it might be something else that is perceived as value, but that will depend on the industry that you're in and the niche that you have. So I love telling my story. I talk about it all the time. I think it's a good rally cry. It's like, for all of you who hate working at 9 to 5, me too. Like, let's do this. But I reserve that to a few times a month.
Let's talk about Instagram ads. What is your thought on that? At what point when we're in our initial phases of just building engagement, putting up posts, at what point should we integrate ads into the mix?
Okay, so when we're going to talk about ads, we're going to break this down into two things. There's ads that you create inside of Facebook Ads Manager, and then there's boosted posts. And I want to speak of them differently because I view them differently. Most Instagrammers, people who are not necessarily in business, might boost a post. So inside the app, you hit boost, you pay $5, so on and so forth. What happens when you boost a post is that Instagram is very excited that you spent money, because Instagram is a free platform. So any person who spends money, now there's light bulbs going off over your head, and Instagram is rubbing its hands together saying, we've got you. So what they're going to do, they're going to boost that post and they're going to get you great results. You're going to be so excited. And then the next post that you don't boost, guess where it's going? In the trash. The next one, in the trash. The next one, in the trash. Then it might start to come back because they want you to say, wait a second, should I boost this one too? And should I boost this one? So when people ask me, like, should I just boost this random post? I don't know. It should be fun. I say, unless you have a reason, like this is a big announcement, this is a charitable cause, this is a huge deal, don't, your shoe post, we don't need to boost that one. We need to do something about like the launch of your course. So in those cases, boosting can be a worthwhile opportunity. Typically, when you do an ad in Ads Manager, you don't see the negative results in your engagement on social media because you are doing it outside of the platform and you're like creating a unique ad and just putting money behind it. What really is key is that you are starting to use ads when you have a really strong system built and you have something to bring these people to. Because once they're there, if we are scrambling around, we don't know what to do, then we have a poor user experience. We don't trust you. We're not buying. So you've, probably discussed funnels on here or have considered funnels. And it's really just, when you feel like you're ready to take people from ad to lead magnet into a funnel and you've got it set up, that could be a good time to consider putting, $100 every 2 weeks or something behind an ad to see how it's performing.
So when you're talking about Ad Manager, are you talking about the Ad Manager in Facebook?
Facebook Ads Manager. Mm-hmm. Yep. So typically, if you boost a post on Instagram app, you're just taking your Instagram post and blasting it. But in Facebook Ads Manager, you can create unique ads with images, copy, and links that can go anywhere. And those typically don't have the same engagement effects on your Instagram account as when you boost it directly from the platform.
Yeah. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing with that. I think there's so much value in what you just said because I did not know that. I think that's really good to know.
Yeah. Another tip, this is kind of important. So if you choose to boost a post, that's totally your prerogative. But when you actually see the ad, you can only see the first line of text. So people who just boost whatever they posted in their Instagram post don't realize that I can't see your whole post. I'm seeing only the first line in the picture. So edit your first line of text to be something that hooks people in and makes them want to see more before you boost, so that it's more effective.
Amazing. Pro tips right there. Everybody
What
should
else
be
you
taking
got?
notes. Well, there's pro tips, which is amazing. And I also want to know what your favorite tools are. So we're using for like we're using Later right now. What are your thoughts on that versus Planoly versus Buffer? What are your favorite tools to use?
So I am a Planoly fanatic, but they are also located in Austin, which is not why I'm biased. But I like that they have the desktop application as well as the phone application. I love writing captions on a computer, not on a phone. They're so much easier, oh my gosh, on a computer. Beyond that, the other tools that I use are Lightroom.
Yeah.
Lightroom paid. I have the paid version.
Mm-hmm.
I use it. I've created all my own custom presets, which has helped me brand myself. If you are listening to this podcast, my account Instagram, Time of Joy on Instagram is unique looking. I encourage you to go take a look. And that is because I created my own custom preset that I made in Lightroom, and it has identified me. People know when it's my post because I have a very specific look and style. Um, Beyond that, I use Canva paid for all my graphics and things like that. And then I use Kajabi to host my courses and MailChimp for my emails.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. I actually have a question going back to sort of your presets and the look of your Instagram. We've been getting some advice that the more the more images that get sort of more engagements are the ones that are sort of less professional. So what are your thoughts around that? Because I looked at your Instagram and it's beautiful, but it seems like all of your images are like curated, professional, high-end images. So do you think that's true? Do you think we need to post like more personal shots or stick to a look, stick to a brand?
So I would never say that anybody needs to hold themselves to like a standard of perfection, or, hiring photographers and thinking that this is the only way, because that simply is not true. The reality is that the content I was able to take on my own was of poor quality. So I thankfully now have a best friend who is also my photographer, and I got lucky. But I do think that in certain industries, the raw photos can do really well. For my brand, it hasn't proven yet to be true. However, there is a type of content called disruptive content. I'll just give you like a quick primer of this. Mm-hmm. Disruptive content is something that's unexpected. So let's say, for example, you two only post graphics of your business, infographics, and then one day you hit them with a photo of you two. That will typically have a spike of engagement because it is something new and exciting. Just like how if Teza, she's a big Instagram influencer, she does a photo where it's flipped upside down, that post gets a ton of engagement because people are just mesmerized. So in my case, you're right. If I did post a raw photo, would it probably get a spike of engagement? More than likely, but not because it was better necessarily, but in my case, it'd be because it was different and intriguing for that moment. So I do think for different industries, the different looks can be involved. But it's not holding yourself to a standard of like having professional curated images, but it does have to look like you. It has to represent the brand, and we don't want it to be all over the place. At least like a relative kind of bunch of editing styles and poses and types of content that are coming out.
Amazing. Really appreciate you sharing all that. Really great, tangible advice that we can take away and we can apply it and see how it works. So that's really, really awesome. I want to sort of switch gears a little bit. You have a course, you have several courses actually online. Just tell us a little bit about how long you've been in this course creation world, and tell us about the challenges that you had launching the course and how you pivoted, how you
overcame it.
Yeah.
So my first course launched in October of last year. Yeah, October of last year. And I'll say I was unprepared for the level of time it took in order to create a course. And this is coming from somebody who maybe I'll admit I have some struggles with like focusing. I'm not someone who sits down and like gets it all done in one day. It took me like almost 2 months. I mean, it was a really time investment for me. And so it made me very nervous that I might not be able to sell it. Thankfully, my first launch was over a $15,000 launch, and it really inspired me instantly to keep going because I saw that this work actually ended up, generating something. Mm-hmm. But I will say that I work quite hard on my launches. Typically what I do is I will do a free masterclass type of launch into a course launch. I also tried a waitlist this last time, and that proved itself to be quite fruitful. So some of the challenges that I've had is one, unpreparedness. I mean, wow, there is so many things from the emails to the ads to the copy to the banners. You can get in the weeds quickly. So what I've started to do is outsource. Yay for outsourcing. Thankfully, I met a lovely woman who now does all of my emails, which is just, I mean, that probably gave me back 15 hours right there. So a lot of the challenges were time management, really emotional management, investment in your just burnout. Because by the time you get to a launch, you can be so emotionally drained and fearful in a lot of ways that your energy is like not what you need to launch something that you just invested 4 months in. You need to have the right level. So, in the industry, we have like something called woo-woo, which means like, mindset, beliefs, like things that are kind of outside the sphere of like tangibility. And I do not consider myself to be a woo-woo person personally, but I have found that the less I try to grasp onto every little straw and make it happen, the better things actually turn out to be. Like when I know I've launched it, I've done what I can, instead of gripping my phone, waiting for every sales notification to come through, I have let some of that go and really trusted in the process and just said like, I'm going to show up on live tomorrow. I'm going to make my post. I'm going to follow up. And like, I will let this happen and unfold in the way that it's supposed to, instead of running myself ragged, trying to grasp at every little thing, which has increased, honestly, my sales potential, but I'm showing up with the right energy and it's paying off on the back end. So I really think that people who have failed to do mindset work and understand that it's a wild ride tend to be way too invested in the outcome, and every no feels like a dagger to the heart. And for me, I've been able to move past that and see like, it's just not meant to be. It's just, that person wasn't the right fit. I'm going to learn, and detaching a lot of my personal emotions and self-worth from what is actually happening with the launch. So that was like a really long-winded way of saying being prepared is very important, but also doing the mindset work and protecting your energy and the way that you're thinking about things can also really help your launch. Like if you are going insane and losing sleep, you will not be the best version of you, and people will sense that.
I love everything you said.
So well
I love
said.
everything. Yeah, it's amazing because I can tell you've had. Did you work with a coach, a mindset coach, or?
So I had a business coach, but she helped a lot with the mindset.
Yeah.
Like I crack a lot of self-disparaging jokes because this is my sense of humor.
Yeah.
She'd be like, "No, like you're doing amazing," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah."
Yeah. No, but it's everything you said is just so important because it's kind of like, and we talk about this all the time, it's just not being attached to the outcome and just taking imperfect action. A lot of people, it's kind of like, I need this to be perfect before I launch it. And I know that for myself 100% because I look at our course right now and I'm like, these are all the things that I want to fix before we launch. But when I think about, fixing all those things, it's never going to go out there. So it's like, we just need to put it out there and learn and then iterate and like create more. So I love, love, love everything that you said. I want to go back to, you talked about a little bit your own launch, and you said that you start with sort of like a masterclass and that leads to the actual course launch. Is your masterclass sort of like a live webinar, or is that like a pre-recorded masterclass that people can sign up to for free, and then from there you give them the offer?
I've done both, and I wish I had like a little more tangible data beyond what I just sensed between the two. I think people enjoy coming to my master classes when I am live, because though I am an introvert, when I show up on camera or when I show up to these classes, I truly feel like it's like a Hannah Montana switcheroo where all of a sudden I am like a blazing star across the sky. Like it's like their energy helps me feel really great about the experience, and I want to serve them so much that I'm excited. And when it's a pre-recorded webinar and I'm just saying the information and then like they're taking it, I feel like there's an energy shift that's happening there. So I have also tried workshops. For me personally, the 5-day workshop type launch method, I've done those. It did not work for me. I've tried it twice now, did not work for me. So I think that when I show up with a ton of excitement, I'm teaching, I'm helping, and then I ask for the sale, it is much easier for people to say yes at that time. And so I think I'm going to stick with that. Hopefully what I would like to do in the future is move towards not doing a big launch, but actually doing wait lists to pre-sale to public launch, just to like get the few last seats sold and do it that way instead.
Gotcha. Question about the live webinar. Do you ever sort of find yourself, and I'm speaking from a place of fear, because I've thought about the idea of doing a live webinar for our course, but I don't want to be stuck in like a whoopsie gotcha moment. Do you know how like you'll be like, post your questions in the comments, and then it's like, if there's, I know I'm an expert, I know my stuff, but like if there's just something where somebody's like, gotcha, have you ever felt like that? Have you ever been in that situation?
No, I have not been asked a question that I thought was like off topic that I wouldn't have known. But I will say my very first webinar, I was lucky to have a lot of pent up demand, that there was quite a turnout, which meant the comment section was like the Wild West. And there were like some people who were just like throwing off these random comments. And I was so focused on what I was saying, I couldn't like actually monitor what was nothing like totally insane, but it was just like, Dre, answer this question. Why are you not responding? Why are you not replying? And I was like, I can't see the comments yet. Like, we're not there yet, you know? So just stuff where you look back and you're like, ugh. But so what I do with live launches now is I will turn on the Q&A tool, and I will turn off the comment, like the chat box tool, so that they have to submit more of a formal Q&A, and then you can skip things if it's not appropriate. And answer things that are, but it's cool. Like, you get to record this. You can use that as an asset in your business later on. Great way if people are not really familiar with you two as people, to get them on board with your personalities, way beyond like your skill sets. Just, you know, if I like you, I'll want to do business with you. And that can really shine through in a masterclass way more than like a challenge or something along those lines.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I feel a lot better about potentially doing a live webinar, because I think that what I hear and what you're saying is that at the end of the day, we are still in charge of what we put out there. So it's like, if there's a negative comment or someone's trying to like get me, I can just skim through that, focus on my delivery, focus on my content, and not have to like let that affect me, and not let that stop me, frankly, because it's kind of like that's where the fear comes from. So thank you for that. I think that's super, super valuable for even our listeners as well.
Of course.
Yeah. So Dre, for our listeners, where can they find you? What's upcoming? Where should they tune in?
Yeah.
And sorry, before you answer that.
Oh, the wisdom bomb. All right.
Yes.
I was going to leave you to do that afterwards.
I know. We always asked at the end of every episode if there's one wisdom bomb you can leave our listeners with. What would that be?
Oh, wisdom bomb. All right. let's see, beyond some of the things that, okay, so here, if you are a course creator and you are in the sales process, here is one of the most effective things that I didn't even consider when I was getting started, that now I look back and I'm like, here's what you do. Anybody who has shown a level of interest on your Instagram account, they have sent you enough DMs, they've commented on your stuff, you can tell they're following you around, they're voting on your polls, whatever it is. What you do is you go to their page and you save one of their posts into a bookmark folder entitled leads. And what you do 3 times a week is you go through every single person who's in the leads folder and you give them a comment, you share them some love, you comment on their stories, and you keep those people red hot. Lead tracking management was my number one fail for most of the first year of my business. But if you can implement that at the beginning, you are going to have an awesome folder full of people that just need a few nudges to get the sale going. So I would say that's probably a big one.
I think that's a huge one.
Amazing. That's a really
Thank you
great
so much. I love that one.
Of course.
Amazing. So,
yes,
so Beth,
where to find me? Yes. So my main hub, my business hub, is going to be Instagram.com/timeofdre. But what I really just launched today is an Instagram health check quiz that is free. So you click on the link in my bio. It's going to walk you through a 3-minute quiz that will diagnose the blind spots in your business and your Instagram account. And then you'll get a free webinar that automatically will help you patch those holes. So you'll not only uncover the problem, but you'll be able to start solving the problem right away. So that is something that's a completely free resource. I highly recommend clicking the link in my bio and taking yourself through that.
amazing.
I was actually in the middle of that quiz before we got on this podcast.
Yay.
So
I'm itching to take the quiz.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you guys take it. It was 2 months in the process and now it's launched. So I'm very excited.
Very
Beautiful.
cool.
Well, Dre, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And I think you dropped so many wisdom bombs. I mean, I feel like I was taking notes while we were doing this. I'm like, okay, this and this. So there's so much value that people can get from listening to you. And again, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. And maybe we can have you back on again in a couple of months to just share your successes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I would love to come back anytime.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Course Creation Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being a champion of ours. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and take a quick second to review the podcast. We really want to hear from you. And we're going to be digging through reviews for our next guest. So if you're interested in being a guest, then you know what to do. Also, join our private Facebook community called the Course Creation Crew to connect with other course creators. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at the Course Creation Podcast. That is all. We appreciate you all so much and look forward to seeing you here next time.